Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And the Phils lose again last night to the Mets. They get walked off. And what have we learned? For good? Not much. Or for bad about this Philadelphia Phillies team in this series so far?
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing if you're checking us out in podcast form. You can listen to Locked On Phillies wherever you get your podcast. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube and you didn't know, you can watch us on YouTube. Please hit that subscribe button and also like the videos that you like. It gets you notifications when new episodes are posted when you subscribe. It's free and easy. It also really helps us out. Thank you again to getting us to 5,000 subscribers to the Locked On Phillies YouTube. Appreciate you all very, very much. But man, I haven't really been able to be happy about saying that, because every episode that we've done since has been a reaction to a brutal loss to the New York Mets. So we'll talk about it in a second. I do want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Oh my God, dude. I can't do it anymore with this baseball team playing the New York Mets. I can't freaking do it anymore. I'm so tired of the way that this team goes in the Citi Field, and the second they face adversity, they just seem to hang their heads. Now, the Phillies fought back last night. It was better, I guess, in performance than Monday night, but then why did it hurt more? Well, I guess because we thought we had a chance, and then they get walked off, and Joan Duran just looks pedestrian, even though we know he's one of the best closers in baseball. We're in topsy-turvy. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong land. We're going to start by talking about what we've learned about the Philadelphia Phillies so far in this series with the Mets. We're also going to look at the curious case of Orion Kerkering, because he had a rough outing out of the bullpen last night. He was a big part of why the Phillies had to make that comeback. And he's got some weird numbers that might need to change his role. Definitely need to change his role in the Phillies bullpen. And then we'll take a look at Game 3. Yes, the Phils do have to play the Mets again. No, they can't just forfeit the game. They have to play tonight, 7:10 p.m. And tonight's game is basically worth 2 games, at least for one team. But where do you even start with this series and with last night's game? I mean, everything was bad. The home plate umpire starts off the game by just having no idea where the strike zone is, making Jesus Luzardo work more. Then the home plate umpire just continued the rest of the game to be terrible on both sides. Willie Traynor, I hope he never gets another Phillies game again, or Mets game for that matter, because he was bad for both teams. He's not remotely the reason they lost. I just hate incompetent umpires. Then Jesus Luzardo gets all fired up. And actually, he kind of fought through the adversity of the umpire pretty well, but just didn't have enough to continue to get through the middle innings of this ball game. And the Phils jumped out in the lead in this one, just like they did in Game 1. But they didn't take advantage of the opportunities to bury this Mets team. They didn't. They had chances, and they just did not come through. The next thing you know, everything is collapsing in the 5th. And Orion Kerkering's coming in, and he's giving up runs, and you give up 5 unanswered. At least it wasn't 13 unanswered like you did in Game 1, but just miserable. The second something goes wrong for this Philadelphia Phillies team in that building against that team, they collapse. They crumble. There is no sense of stop the bleeding. There is only, we have to wait out the storm. They're not the aggressor. They're not the active party in these games. They are sitting there and waiting for something to go wrong, almost expecting it to go wrong. It's terrible. And the defense starts to collapse. The approach starts to collapse. The Phillies struck out 15 times. Former Gold Glove Harrison Bader overthrows JT Realmuto. Terrible. Hit the cutoff. For the love of God. And I know Harrison Bader had a big-time home run last night. Bryce Harper had a big night at the dish. So those guys showed fight throughout the game. Edmundo Sosa, a really good game. Tanner Banks, Jose Alvarado out of the bullpen, getting the job done. Matt Strahm getting the job done. So there were guys that did their job, but this is why we're talking today about the collective of this Philadelphia Phillies team. Because I do not care that Edmundo Sosa looks like he just shows up wherever, whenever, against whoever, and balls. Because it does not matter if the rest of this team is so worried about, oh, we can't beat the Mets. Like, one guy is not turning this around. One guy's not. It's going to take this team's mentality to change. So what have we learned about the Phillies? How far do we take this? That's the main question today. Because we know, right? This baseball team is good. They are. They don't stink. They're not terrible. They are talented. And they play other great teams in baseball really, really well. They currently hold the season series lead over the Dodgers. They hold the season series over the Cubs, and that is done. Like, they handle the rest of the teams in their division well. They've handled American League teams like the Tigers and the Mariners and the Yankees very well. This team beats other good teams. If it was just, hey, when the Phillies play good opponents, they lose, well, then guess what? They're a team that plays well against bad competition and doesn't play up to the moment. Great. And then you're not going anywhere. But that's not what this team is. It's just the Mets. And the Mets are bad against pretty much everyone else if you look at the last month. And they're just good against the Phillies. It's this weird division rival relationship where these two teams have a very clearly established hierarchy when they match up. So what does that say about the Phillies? Does it say that they don't have the it factor? Does it say that they're chokers? Does it say that they're gutless and just cannot fight against their biggest division rival this season and find a way to just scrape out a win against a team that knocked them out of the postseason last year, or withstand the snowball effect of when something goes wrong at Citi Field? I mean, it's hard to look at this team and say they're not mentally defeated by their opponent right now. And that is an absolute travesty. As a fan of this team, you should be embarrassed that they have this much trouble against the New York Mets. That's not how this is supposed to work. And somebody's got to step up and change it. I don't know who it's going to be. And I'm not talking about go get a hit in a big spot. I'm not talking about Harrison Bader hitting a 2-run home run to tie the game in the 8th inning, right? Because clearly that was not enough to get the job done last night. I'm not worried about Joan Duran, by the way, in the 9th inning. That's just Phillies, Mets, ridiculous. Of course it happened that he just didn't even record an out. The guy who got 17 of the first 19 batters he faced in his Phillies tenure out. Like, he's still fine. He's still good. But this place, Citi Field, is a house of horrors for the Phillies. And the Mets are a horror movie opponent, right? They're the villain of this story for the Phillies, and they just can't seem – they're like Freddy Krueger, man. You can't get away, go to sleep, wake up, they're still there. It's just ridiculous. And when I say somebody needs to step up and change this, I mean that somebody in that locker room needs to get on a damn stool, turn off the music, and rip these guys for the effort that they're putting in up there in New York. That's it. And I'm not saying, right, they're not trying to win, but they're not believing that they can win, in my opinion. You could just see it, the way that they make certain plays, the mistakes that they make, the issues that plague this team every time they face the New York Mets. It doesn't say bad baseball team. It says bad mentality. And that needs to change. So what we've learned about the Phils is if they match up with the Mets in the postseason, they're probably dead. If they match up with anybody else, we'll see. If they match up with a team that has the same type of style as the Mets and tries to pitch around their big guys and take advantage of the lower part of the lineup that has not been productive in this series, really. And if one of the top 3 guys of Turner, Harper, or Schwarber go cold, you're going to be out. And we've learned that this Phillies team is not great at cutting off narratives, right? What have we seen the past couple of years in the postseason? Bad approach at the plate, Boom or bust offensive creation. You go home because of it because you don't score consistently enough. They've had plenty of chances to cut off that narrative. They have not. Playoff choker. Some people said that about him when they were up in the World Series after 2022. Now, largely the narrative was it's the Astros. They were the better team. And that's the one I subscribe to. But the Phillies had that narrative about him. And then in 2023, choke again against the Diamondbacks. And then in 2024, division title, choke against the New York Mets. And now this year, if you want to sit here today and say that you don't believe in this baseball team anymore, because when they are pushed to the brink and say, hey, this is your issue, here is your opportunity to fix it, and they just lay down, or they don't get it done, or everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong, it's very hard to believe in this baseball team. It is. Now, I'm not giving up on this season, but I am absolutely giving up hope that they can beat this Mets baseball team, consistently at least. Could they win tonight? Maybe. Could they win at the bank? Much more probable than winning at Citi Field for whatever reason. But can they consistently beat this Mets team as currently constructed? You can't say that anymore at this point. I brought it up on the radio today. I'll bring it up again here on the podcast. We are at the point in this Mets-Phillies relationship, just like Pedro Martinez was at in his Boston tenure with facing the Yankees, where Pedro said, at this point, I just have to tip my cap and call the Yankees my daddy. Well, at this point, you just got to tip your cap and call the Mets your daddy if you're a Philadelphia Phillies player. Or you could wake up and fight back. That's the team that I want to see. But unfortunately, that's not the team we've got. Coming up next, the Orion Kerkering we want to see has not been the Orion Kerkering we've got, at least in certain circumstances. And in others, he's been really good. What in the world is the deal with Kerkering and what needs to change? We will talk about his rough outing and a bad season trend as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, but first, we got to talk about our friends over at Game Time. And I know right now you might not be thinking that you want to go to a Phillies game. Well, that's okay. You know what's coming up next Thursday? The Philadelphia Eagles start their season. And there's nothing like catching a game live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. Banner night for the Birds, Eagles, Cowboys. It's big-time stuff. But actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. And that's why I use Game Time anytime I'm going to a game. The app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You're always getting 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. There are going to be a lot of great sporting events coming your way here in Philadelphia. And because it's the big city of Philadelphia or the surrounding area of this Delaware Valley, Jersey, all of this, it's not just sports that Game Time does. Comedy, concerts, theater, all that great stuff. Anything you need a ticket for. Game Time, they're the ones that can get it done for you. So go ahead and check out Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. It's that easy. Download Game Time today. Go ahead and check them out on the Game Time app. Let's also talk about FanDuel because, man, it is a great time of year, not just to go to sporting events, but to bet on them. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There are a lot of great opportunities for that, especially with college football. So here's what you do. Here's the strategy, right? Bet $5, your bet wins, you get $300. So why don't you find on the college football slate the biggest favorite in week 0? Week 0 starts this coming weekend. And you're going to have some major, major mismatches. So you take a look at it and you say, okay, this team is minus 10,000 because the University of Alabama is playing the School of the Blind. $5 would probably win you a penny. But in this promo, $5 gets you $300. That's the way to do it. And then you use that and you put a bunch of futures out there. You bet on other games throughout the season. you bet on baseball and maybe against the Phillies at tonight's game against the Mets. I don't know, bet however you'd like. But FanDuel gives you all of these options. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Go ahead and check them out. One more thing I want to bring up to you before we get back to the show. We have our listener survey going on here with Locked On. And Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance for your voice to be heard. Tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. Appreciate that. All right, back to being angry about the Phillies. Oh, man. Yesterday, I was beaten down. Like, I was dumbfounded. I was, down in the dirt, right? More sad, more depressed. Like, today, I'm more angry. How dare you continue to do this against that Mets team? Do you have any pride? That was my sentiment when I got up this morning and thought about last night's game. That was my sentiment, hell, while the game was going on and as soon as the game was over. And part of the reason the Phillies had trouble staying in that game was Orion Kerkering's relief appearance for Jesus Luzardo. Now, he came in, he had inherited runners, he allowed them to score. And that's a trend for Orion Kerkering this year. Now, his numbers don't look bad at face value because if you get him in a clean inning, he's been pretty darn good. But Orion Kerkering has had 30 inherited runners this year, and 14 of them have scored. Just in case you're wondering, 50% of your inherited runner scoring is not good, especially not by a guy that you're going to rely on heavily in October. He's one of your top 3 arms in the postseason bullpen. Once you take Jose Alvarado out of the mix, it's Kerkering, it's Strahm, it's Duran. Those are your guys. And if Kerkering is allowing 50% of his inherited runners to score, how can you possibly, if you're Rob Thompson, put him in another situation where he has runners on base? I would not do it for weeks from now. And then maybe if the team starts rolling, you can try it again. But David Robertson can go in that spot. Matt Strahm can go in that spot. Jose Alvarado can go in that spot. Duran is your closer, so he won't. But like Tanner Banks can go in those spots. I don't even care about handedness anymore. I can't see Orion Kerkering for the foreseeable future in situations where he has runners on base. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those weird things. So I'm not going to try and break down and say, hey, his mechanics or anything like that. Because he's had outings where he started innings clean, allowed base runners, and gotten out of it. So it's not just, hey, he's bad from the stretch. Remember when Jesus Luzardo was going through that earlier this year? That's not what I think it is for Orion Kerkering. I think it's a mental thing where maybe he just gets too juiced up and he loses command because of the, adrenaline or whatever, the pressure of the moment. And it causes him to kind of short circuit in those spots where he inherits runners. It's a mess. Now, the good news for the Phillies bullpen is that Jordan Romano was placed on the 15-day injured list with right middle finger inflammation. The jokes write themselves. Joe Ross was flat out released. He's no longer with the team. I don't love that the door is still potentially open for Jordan Romano to come back to this team, but that's something I've got enough to be angry about with the guys currently playing that I will reserve my anger if and when he comes back, right? If they actually activate him off the injured list. This could be just the start of the process of maybe releasing him once you get time to evaluate more minor league arms. The Phillies may be looking at Lehigh Valley and saying, hey, who can we call up? What can we do? The guys they brought up this time, Daniel Robert, who's been up with the team a couple times this year. Lou Trevino comes back up. So you've got some guys that have at least pitched at the major league level before or this season before, but the Kerkering thing's a big issue. Because now your bullpen, which was already restricted, becomes restricted even more. How do you get through a postseason game? Let's say somebody goes 5 shutout innings, and then they get into trouble in the 6th. Okay, you could go Banks, but then what if he gets into trouble? Like, one thing goes wrong once you go to the bullpen in that scenario, and all of a sudden you don't have guys. And you're throwing Daniel Robert, or God forbid Jordan Romano comes back and they actually try and sell us on him again. And you're throwing him in a big postseason spot. And I refuse to allow that to happen. But it's going to be dependent on Orion Kerkering showing he can get guys out with inherited runners. And he can't. And it's not just he stinks, right? He's been really good this year in clean innings. Now, it's on Rob Thompson and Rob Thompson alone to make this decision. It's very rare that you hear me specifically call out the manager, right? There are some things where I'll say he could have done a better job here. I disagreed with this decision. I understand why he made it. If he puts Orion Kerkering in the next 2 weeks in a spot that is not a clean inning, I'm going to have to rip him because that's flat out bad managing in my opinion. You can't put a guy in a spot where the numbers are clearly screaming at you he doesn't do well in. And is it on Kerkering to be better? Yes. But it's also on Rob Thompson to make the best decision for this baseball team. And right now it is not Kerkering in those type of spots. And I don't want to hear him crying poor about the bullpen because there are other arms you can go to at this point with the acquisition of Robert, with the trade for Duran, that you can make this work and you should be able to give Kerkering clean innings. Something between the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning should be a clean opportunity. But for right now, it restricts the bullpen even more, and that becomes magnified in the postseason if these struggles continue. So remember when I said yesterday that everything was bad, it's all bad, there is no good? Well, there was some good, I guess, in the game last night, but it still feels all pretty darn bad, and that's why we talked about what have we learned about the Phillies and what we've learned about the DNA of this team. And I don't know, the more you look at the individual players, the more I worry about October. Speaking of October, standings are still important. The division race is still important. This is not going to be a defeatist podcast. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the Phillies season is over, right? Because it's not. Again, they play other teams well. They just can't beat the Mets. Now, if they match up against the Mets in the postseason, it may be time to say season over. But until we are pretty darn sure that they're in trouble, we've got to just continue to plug along. Game 3 is tonight, 7:10 p.m., Flushing, Queens. A chance to salvage something. And it would be an important salvage mission because if the Mets are to win this game, it basically counts as 2. I'll tell you why as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk about our friends, our new friends over at Upside. Locked On Phillies fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app. And in the App Store or Google Play right now, you can get it. Start earning cash at the pump today. It's super easy. And use my limited time promo code SEASON. SEASON, and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already needed. You're not doing anything different. You just have this app, you go about your day, you save money when you buy gas. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's 100% totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code SEASON for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON, SEASON. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Game 3, Phillies Mets. And if you're wondering what I'm wondering, yes, we do have to go through this all again later on tonight. A 7:10 p.m. first pitch from up in Queens, and Taijuan Walker is on the mound against Nolan McLean. McLean, the standout rookie who has made 2 starts for the Mets and has looked pretty darn good in those 2 starts. Walker, the resurgent veteran, the former Met that has earned his way into the good graces of Phillies fans in some extent this year with such a huge bounce back year, a stabilizing year for his career and also the Phillies pitching staff in a lot of ways. Before we talk about why game 3 of this series is worth 2 games, I need to say this. I know we're angry. I need us to be fair. If Taijuan Walker goes out and gets shelled tonight, he will get one of the most undeserved tidal waves of criticism of the season. He has been awesome this year for the Phillies in what we could have expected from him. Everybody wanted him off this baseball team. I'm not saying he's Saiwan, like people were calling him on our YouTube chat on Kincaid and South Tunis this morning over in 97.5 The Fanatic. He's not winning any awards, right? But he is a player that has really stepped up in a lot of big spots for the Phillies. And we lauded him for that through recently. We should have probably lauded him for it more throughout the year, but we still have the scars of the 2024 season where he was terrible. Bottom line is this, right? He was not expected to do much for this team. He was asked to do a lot. He has answered the bell every time. And I know because of the temperament of this fan base right now, myself included, if he goes out there tonight in New York and gets shelled, it's going to be a lot of people coming down on Taijuan Walker. Now, I want him to throw well. If he does not throw well, I will criticize him. But let's not try and make this see, this is why this guy never should have been on this baseball team. He stinks, DFA him, all of this stuff, because I know there will be people like that if that happens. But this is a very important game, not just because the Phillies have a chance to salvage a game in the series against the Mets, even though I doubt that that'll make any of us feel much better, right? I think the story of the series was already written in the first 2 games. And I think today, regardless of the outcome, we're still going to leave this series saying that was as sickening as we could have imagined. Now, a sweep would obviously be worse, and every game matters. But certain games matter more than even others. And that's because the Phillies and the Mets will play 4 more games after this series. All 4 of those are at Citizens Bank Park. Now, the Mets, if you'll remember, way back in the first meeting between these 2 teams, swept the Phillies out of Citi Field. That's 3 wins for the Mets. Then the series at the bank went 2-1 in favor of the Phillies. So the Phillies have 2 wins on the year. The Mets coming into this series had 4 wins. Now they've taken the next 2. So they are up to 6 wins. Teams play in division a total of 13 games. So if the Mets win tonight, that will make it 7 total, which means they will guarantee themselves a season series win over the Phillies. Now, why is that important? Because of the tiebreaker. If these 2 teams end up tied at the end of the season for the National League East title and for playoff seeding, the Mets will win it if they win tonight's game. The only possible outcome is if the Phillies, in favor of the Phillies, is if they win this game and then complete a 4-game sweep at Citizens Bank Park, which is just not a realistic ask whatsoever, seeing how these 2 teams play each other, but at least push it off until the next series. Like, I can't see you get swept, give up the tiebreaker, give up another game in the division, walk out of New York only 4 games up. That would be an absolute mess, and I can't handle that. But tonight, you're really going to see if the Phillies' approach can be modified. Sean Manaea looked awesome because the Phillies made him look awesome. They were chasing a bunch of stuff, and they did that against him in the postseason last year. Well, tonight, they're going to see a pitcher they're not familiar with, Nolan McLean, a guy that they have not seen at any point because he's just started his major league career. So what do you do if you have a pitcher that you're facing that you don't have any knowledge of firsthand? You'll watch film and everything, but when you step in the box the first time, make him work. Make him get you out. Do not get yourself out by chasing at stuff when you have not seen him throw, right? Be very, very selective. Maybe that plays into what the Phillies need to do right now because they are swinging themselves out of this series in big spots. Maybe it'll help. And also, he doesn't have knowledge of the Phillies either. So this goes both ways. So anyone who's like, well, they're automatically going to lose because it's a pitcher I've never heard of. I know that's the mentality. I can't subscribe to that, but I understand where it comes from. Bottom line is this. If the Phillies go up there and they are again undisciplined at the plate, they will lose again tonight. They will be swept by the New York Mets. They will walk out of there to the ire of the fan base. Ire might not even be a strong enough word. The hatred of the fan base for the performance they put together. It's your last warning, Phillies. You better figure this out because it will not be a fun conversation tomorrow or really for the next couple of weeks because this will stick with us if you do not win tonight's game. That's all. No pressure or anything. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Hopefully it's a better one tomorrow, folks, because I can't keep doing these lost to the Mets shows. But I appreciate you tuning in anyway. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. And I will talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.